My name is Albert Reynolds, 59 years old, and I never thought I'd hear those words from my own daughter. I've been raising Cassidy and Mia alone since their mother died of cancer 12 years ago. It hasn't been easy, but we managed. At least I thought we did, until that day I visited Cassidy at the apartment I'd bought for her. "Go away, or I'll call the police," she screamed in my face. The shock froze me in place, but what I did next changed everything. While I share this painful journey of tough love and unexpected consequences, let me know where you're watching from, and hit that subscribe button if you've ever had to make a difficult decision for someone you love. Life has a way of testing you when you least expect it. My story isn't unique, but maybe sharing it will help someone facing similar challenges. I spent 20 years in the Army Corps of Engineers before transitioning to civilian life as a structural engineer for Hammond Construction. My military background gave me discipline, resilience, and a strong sense of responsibility traits that served me well when raising two daughters alone. My wife, Elizabeth, was the love of my life from the moment we met in college. She was studying art history while I was on an ROTC scholarship for engineering. We were opposites in many ways, her creative spirit balancing my practical nature, but we shared core values about family honesty and hard work. We married young, had Cassidy shortly after, and Mia came along 5 years later. Our life wasn't fancy, but it was good. We bought a modest 4-bedroom home in a neighborhood with decent schools. Elizabeth taught art at the local community center while I built my career. We saved diligently for the girls' college funds, took camping trips instead of expensive vacations, and focused on building a stable home. Everything changed when Elizabeth was diagnosed with aggressive breast cancer. Mia was only 7. Cassidy 12. For 3 years, we fought the disease together, enduring rounds of chemotherapy, radiation, and multiple surgeries. Elizabeth approached her illness with remarkable courage, more concerned about how the girls were coping than her own suffering. During one of her final lucid moments in hospice care, Elizabeth squeezed my hand and made me promise something. "Albert, raise our girls to be strong, independent women who can stand on their own 2 feet. Don't let them use my absence as a crutch. Love them fiercely, but teach them to face consequences. That's how they'll grow." I swore to her I would not, realizing how challenging that promise would become. After Elizabeth passed, I threw myself into being both mother and father. I learned to French braid hair by watching YouTube tutorials. I figured out how to shop for training bras and talk about menstruation without dying of embarrassment. I attended every parent-teacher conference, recital, and sports game. My colleagues at Hammond were understanding, allowing me flexible hours when needed. My parenting style was influenced by my military background, but tempered by Elizabeth's more nurturing approach that I tried to incorporate. I believed in clear expectations, consistent consequences, and teaching personal responsibility. We had house rules. Do your chores. Maintain decent grades. Tell the truth and respect each other. In return, I provided stability support for their interests and unconditional love. This approach seemed to work well, especially with Mia. She was studious, thoughtful, and retained Elizabeth's artistic sensitivity. Even through typical teenage rebellion, she remained fundamentally respectful and responsible. Cassidy was different. As a child, she was high-spirited, but manageable. She excelled academically and in sports, particularly swimming. She had Elizabeth's striking looks, intelligence, and charm. Teachers consistently praised her potential, but after her mother died, something shifted gradually. At first, I attributed her increasing defiance to grief when she started lying about her whereabouts at 15. I tried counseling both individually and together. It helped temporarily. When she was caught drinking at 16, I grounded her, but also had lengthy conversations about responsible choices. When her grades slipped senior year, I hired tutors and reduced her privileges until she brought them back up. Throughout these challenges, I maintained a fundamental belief. Children need to understand that actions have consequences, both positive and negative. The real world doesn't reward entitlement or excuse poor choices, no matter how sad your backstory might be. I believed the greatest disservice I could do my daughters would be to shield them from this reality. This philosophy served as the foundation for all my parenting decisions, including the ones that would eventually lead to that devastating confrontation with Cassidy. "Dad, why are you so strict with me compared to everyone else's parents?" Cassidy once asked during her junior year of high school. We were driving home after I'd picked her up early from a party where I discovered alcohol was being served. "Because I love you enough to be unpopular," I told her. "My job isn't to be your friend. It's to raise you to become a capable, responsible adult." "Mom would have understood," she muttered, looking out the window. Those words stung, but I didn't waver. "Your mother and I were always united on values, Cassidy. She might have approached this differently, but she would never condone underage drinking." Even then, I could sense Cassidy slipping away, using her mother's memory as a weapon against me. It was a preview of greater challenges to come, though I didn't recognize it fully at the time. Despite these difficulties, Cassidy graduated high school with honors and was accepted to State University with a partial academic scholarship. I was proud and hopeful this new chapter would help her mature. I covered the remaining tuition costs, provided a monthly allowance for necessities, and helped her move into the dorms with everything she needed. "College is your job now," I told her. "Treat it seriously, manage your allowance responsibly, and we'll be fine." Mia, watching this transition, seemed to take mental notes. She was 13 then, quieter, but observant already, showing signs of the responsibility that would characterize her approach to life. The contrast between my daughters was becoming more apparent, though I tried not to make comparisons or play favorites. "Dad, is Cassidy going to be okay at college?" Mia asked me the night after we dropped her sister off. "I think so, sweetheart. Everyone needs space to grow up in their own way." Mia nodded thoughtfully. "I miss Mom at times like these. She would know exactly what to say to Cass." "I miss her too," I admitted. "But your mom prepared us better than we realize. We carry her wisdom with us." Little did I know how much I would need to draw on that wisdom in the years ahead, as Cassidy's path diverged further from the values we had tried to instill, leading us inevitably toward confrontation and hard choices that would test my resolve as a father. The summer after Cassidy's freshman year of college, I noticed concerning changes. She returned home with highlighted hair, several new tattoos, and an attitude that suggested she viewed our home as a hotel. When I asked about her classes, her answers were vague. When I inquired about her grades, she changed the subject. It took weeks of persistent questions before she finally admitted she was on academic probation after nearly failing most of her spring semester courses. "What happened?" I asked, trying to remain calm. "You've always been a strong student." "College is different, Dad," she said defensively. "Not everything is about grades. I'm finding myself experiencing life." "Finding yourself doesn't require failing classes I'm paying thousands for," I pointed out. This sparked our first major argument since she'd left for college. Cassidy accused me of caring only about money and achievement, not her happiness. I countered that responsibility and happiness weren't mutually exclusive. Despite this rocky start, I helped Cassidy create a plan to improve her academic standing. She seemed genuinely committed, and I chose to believe in her capacity for growth. When she returned to school for sophomore year, our relationship had stabilized somewhat. Then came the credit card bill. I had added Cassidy as an authorized user on one of my credit cards for emergencies only. We had a clear agreement textbooks, medical expenses, or car repairs qualified. Clothing restaurants or entertainment did not. The October statement showed over $3,000 in charges, designer clothing, concert tickets, restaurants, and bar tabs. I called Cassidy immediately. "It's not a big deal, Dad," she said. "Everyone's parents cover these things." "That's not how our family works," I reminded her. "Those charges violate our agreement." "Fine, I'll pay you back when I can," she said dismissively. "No, you'll pay it off now. Sell whatever you bought, pick up extra work hours, but this balance needs to be cleared before Thanksgiving break." She protested, but I held firm. Eventually, Cassidy managed to pay back most of the money, though I suspected she borrowed from friends rather than making the sacrifices required. I removed her as an authorized user and suggested she apply for her own credit card with a low limit to build financial responsibility. "You never make Mia struggle like this," she complained during Thanksgiving dinner. "Mia hasn't given me reason to impose these lessons," I replied. "When you demonstrate responsibility, you earn more freedom." The pattern continued throughout Cassidy's college years. She would make poor decisions, face consequences, temporarily improve, then slide back into problematic behavior. Meanwhile, Mia entered high school and thrived, maintaining excellent grades while participating in volunteer work at the local hospital, already focused on her dream of becoming a doctor. Despite the differences in their paths, I tried to love both my daughters equally, while responding appropriately to their individual choices. I celebrated Cassidy's achievements, like when she finally made the dean's list her junior year, or when she landed an internship with a marketing firm. I also remained consistent about expectations and consequences when necessary. By the time Cassidy graduated with a degree in communications, I had mixed feelings. Pride in her accomplishment, yes, but concern about her readiness for independent adult life. Her sporadic employment during summers and frequent requests for extra money suggested financial management wasn't her strong suit. That's when I made a decision that would ultimately lead to our confrontation. Instead of simply helping Cassidy get started in an apartment like many parents do, I decided to purchase a small condominium for her to live in. The property market in our area was strong, making it a solid investment regardless of how the arrangement with Cassidy worked out. The 2-bedroom condo was in a decent neighborhood close to several businesses where she might find employment. It was modest, but modern, perfect for a young professional starting out. I paid the down payment and took out a mortgage in my name. "This is amazing, Dad, my own place," Cassidy exclaimed when I showed her the keys. "It comes with conditions," I explained carefully. "I'm covering the mortgage for now, but you're responsible for utilities, association fees, and maintenance, and I expect you to pay me $300 monthly toward the mortgage, about half what you'd pay to rent a similar place." $300. That's so cheap. "Thank you." She hugged me tightly. "The goal is for you to build financial responsibility while having security," I continued. "Keep the place well maintained. No pets without discussing it first, since I'm the owner. No modifications without approval." Got it," she said, already taking photos to share on social media. "And Cassidy," I added seriously, "this arrangement depends on you holding steady employment and meeting your financial obligations consistently. If that doesn't happen, we'll need to reconsider." "Dad, stop worrying. This is exactly what I needed. You won't regret this." For the first few months, everything seemed fine. Cassidy found a job at a local marketing agency, decorated the condo tastefully, and made her payments on time. I began to think perhaps this structured independence was exactly what she needed to mature. Then small issues arose. The homeowners association contacted me about noise complaints. Cassidy's payments began arriving late, always with plausible excuses. When I visited, I noticed the condo wasn't being maintained as well as it should be, with minor damage to walls and floors. "It's normal wear and tear, Dad," she dismissed when I pointed it out. "Don't be so uptight." Around this time, Mia left for college on a pre-med track, having earned a substantial scholarship through her academic excellence. The contrast between my daughter's approaches to adult responsibility became even more pronounced. "How's Cassidy doing in the condo?" Mia asked during one of our weekly phone calls. "She's managing," I said, not wanting to criticize one daughter to another. "It's an adjustment." "You know she posts a lot about parties there," Mia said hesitantly. "I see it on social media." I hadn't known since Cassidy had apparently restricted what I could see on her accounts. This revelation prompted me to pay closer attention to what was happening with the property I was financially responsible for setting us on a collision course that would ultimately test the limits of my parental philosophy. 6 months after Cassidy moved into the condo, the warning signs became impossible to ignore. Her monthly payments stopped completely, with increasingly elaborate excuses. Her company delayed paychecks. She had unexpected car repairs. A friend needed emergency help. I accepted these explanations initially, wanting to believe her intentions were good, despite her execution. Then came the call from Mr. Wilson, who lived in the unit below Cassidy's. "Mr. Reynolds, I've tried to be patient because I know she's your daughter, but the noise is unbearable. Parties until 4 a.m. on weeknights, strange people coming and going at all hours. Last night someone was smoking something in the hallway that definitely wasn't tobacco, if you understand me." I thanked him for calling me directly rather than the homeowners association, and promised to address the situation immediately. That evening, I attempted to reach Cassidy multiple times with no success. Her voicemail was full, and my texts went unanswered. The next morning, I received another troubling call, this time from the property management company. The quarterly association fee of $800 was 3 months overdue, and they were preparing to place a lien on the property. I explained that my daughter was responsible for those fees as part of our agreement, but legally, as the owner, the obligation was ultimately mine. I paid the outstanding balance and fees amounting to nearly $3,000 to protect my credit and investment. Then I drove to the condo unannounced, determined to have a serious conversation with my daughter. What I found shocked me. The once neat condo was in disarray. Empty bottles littered the countertops. Furniture was damaged, and there was a distinctive odor suggesting recreational drug use. Cassidy wasn't home, despite it being a Tuesday morning when she should have been at work. I called her boss at the marketing agency only to discover Cassidy had been terminated almost 2 months earlier for unreliable attendance. She had been lying about going to work, while apparently living off whatever resources she could scrape together, including, I suspected, the money she should have been using for her financial obligations. I waited at the condo for 3 hours before Cassidy finally returned, looking disheveled and surprised to see me. "Dad, what are you doing here?" She quickly tried to gather some of the more obvious evidence of partying. "Sit down, Cassidy. We need to talk." My tone left no room for argument. I laid out everything: the missed payments, the complaints, the job loss she had concealed, and the deteriorating condition of the property. "This has to stop immediately. You've violated every aspect of our agreement." "You're overreacting," she insisted. "Everyone goes through rough patches. The job wasn't a good fit. But I'm interviewing for better opportunities, and those neighbors are just uptight." "Cassidy, I've paid nearly $3,000 in fees you agreed to cover. The property is being damaged. You've been lying about employment. This isn't a rough patch. It's a pattern of irresponsibility. So what do you want from me?" Her tone shifted to defensiveness. "Not everyone can be perfect like Mia. This isn't about Mia. It's about the agreements you made and failed to keep. I'm giving you 2 options: Either find legitimate employment within 2 weeks, start repaying what you owe, and end the parties immediately, or this living arrangement is over. You can't just kick me out. This is my home, she protested. No, Cassidy. This is my property that I've allowed you to live in under specific conditions. Conditions you've repeatedly violated. You've always been this way, she said bitterly. So rigid, so unforgiving. Mom would never treat me like this. The mention of Elizabeth used as a weapon again stung deeply. Your mother believed in consequences as much as I do. She wanted you to become self-reliant, not entitled. Our conversation escalated from there, with Cassidy alternating between tearful promises to improve and angry accusations about my parenting. I remained calm but firm, reiterating the conditions and the 2-week deadline. I'll figure it out okay. Just stop threatening me, she finally said, clearly wanting the conversation to end. Against my better judgment, I decided to give her one more chance. 2 weeks, Cassidy. Show me concrete progress, or we'll have to make different arrangements. As I left, I noticed a young man watching from the parking lot, quickly looking away when he saw me. Something about his presence concerned me, an intuition that proved accurate in the days that followed. Over the next 2 weeks, Cassidy avoided my calls entirely. The one time she answered, she claimed to be working on things, but provided no specifics. Meanwhile, I received more complaints from neighbors and discovered the utilities were at risk of disconnection due to non-payment. My patience exhausted, I consulted with an attorney about my legal options. As the property owner, I had the right to sell the condo or evict Cassidy for violating our agreement, though the latter would require formal procedures. The attorney advised trying one more direct conversation before pursuing either option. That fateful conversation was now just days away, the confrontation that would push us past the point of no return and force me to make the most difficult decision of my parenting journey. The day that changed everything was unseasonably warm for October. I had spent the previous night reviewing Elizabeth's journals, seeking guidance from her wisdom, as I often did during difficult parenting moments. One passage stood out. Sometimes the kindest thing we can do is allow natural consequences to teach lessons we cannot. With renewed resolve, I drove to Cassidy's condo early Saturday morning, expecting to find her home. When repeated knocking brought no response, I used my key as the legal owner to enter, calling out as I stepped inside. The condition of the condo had deteriorated even further in just 2 weeks. The distinctive smell of marijuana hung in the air. Empty liquor bottles cluttered every surface, and what appeared to be cigarette burns marked the couch I had helped her purchase. Food containers and clothing littered the floor, and a water stain spread across one ceiling, suggesting a leak no one had reported. From the bedroom, I heard hurried movement. Moments later, Cassidy emerged wearing pajamas, looking startled and irritated. Behind her, a man I'd never seen before appeared shirtless and tattooed, clearly uncomfortable at my presence. What the hell? You can't just walk in without calling first. Cassidy's voice was sharp with anger and embarrassment. I've been calling for 2 weeks, I replied evenly, though my heart was racing at the scene before me. We had an agreement to discuss your progress, which expired yesterday. I've been busy, she muttered, glancing back at the man who now leaned against the bedroom doorframe, watching our exchange with detached interest. Who's your friend? I asked, unable to ignore the stranger in the property I owned. This is Derek. He's been staying here for a while. She didn't offer to introduce us properly. Staying here? You never mentioned a roommate, which would violate our agreement regardless. He's not a roommate, he's my boyfriend, Cassidy replied defensively. And I don't need your permission for that. I took a deep breath, trying to remain calm and focused. Cassidy, we need to talk privately about your living situation. It's a conversation between you and me. Anything you want to say, you can say in front of Derek. He lives here now, too." This casual announcement confirmed my worst fears about the situation. "How long has Derek been living here?" "A couple months. What's the big deal?" "The big deal is this property is in my name. I'm legally responsible for it, and everyone living here. You violated our agreement by moving someone in without discussion on top of the missed payments and property damage." Derek finally spoke, his tone surprisingly confrontational. "Man, you need to chill. Cass said this place was hers. If I'd known her dad was gonna be all up in our business, I wouldn't have moved in." "I'm not up in your business," I replied firmly. "I'm addressing a situation with property I own." "Whatever, dude. It's too early for this." Derek turned to go back to the bedroom. "Derek, please stay," I said. "Since you're living here, you should be part of this conversation." I wanted to understand exactly what Cassidy had told him about the living arrangement. "Dad, stop interrogating him," Cassidy interjected. "This is my place, and I decide who stays here." "That's exactly the problem, Cassidy. This isn't your place. It's my investment that I've allowed you to live in under specific conditions, all of which you've broken." "So what now? Another lecture about responsibility? More threats?" Her voice rose with each question. "No lectures, just facts. You've lost your job, stopped making payments, damaged the property, and moved someone in without permission. I've decided to sell the condo." Cassidy's face flushed with anger. "You can't do that. I can, and I will. As the legal owner, that's my right. I've already spoken with a realtor." "This is so typical. You've always looked for ways to control me, to make me feel like I'm not good enough." Cassidy was shouting now. "You did this with Mom, too. Always making the decisions. Always knowing what's best for everyone." The accusation about Elizabeth was a low blow that momentarily stunned me. Derek had retreated to the kitchen, clearly uncomfortable with the family drama unfolding. "This isn't about control, Cassidy. It's about consequences. You made agreements you didn't keep. The condo was an opportunity to build responsibility, not a gift without strings." "I hate how you twist everything into some life lesson." She was pacing now, agitated. "Normal parents help their kids without constant judgment. Helping doesn't mean enabling," I said, keeping my voice steady despite my rising emotion. "I won't finance a lifestyle that's clearly harmful to you." "Harmful? You don't know anything about my life. You just can't stand that I'm not living by your rigid military rules anymore." I glanced around the chaos of the condo at Derek, who was now drinking beer at 9 in the morning, at my daughter, whose appearance suggested she hadn't been taking care of herself. "What I see concerns me deeply, Cassidy. This isn't about rules. It's about your well-being." "My well-being is none of your business. I'm an adult." She stepped closer, her face contorted with anger. "You need to leave. Now. We need to discuss the timeline for selling the property and your plans for new housing," I insisted, standing my ground. That's when she screamed at the words I never imagined hearing from my daughter. "Go away, or I'll call the police." The shock of those words froze me in place. My own child threatening to call authorities on me, as if I were an intruder rather than her father, who had provided this very roof over her head. In that moment, I saw how vast the gulf between us had become, how fundamentally Cassidy had rejected not just my rules, but my role in her life. After a moment of painful silence, I nodded slowly. "I'm sorry you feel that way, Cassidy." Without another word, I turned and walked out the door. In my car, hands trembling slightly on the steering wheel, I made a decision that would forever alter our relationship. I pulled out my phone and called Sarah Jenkins, the realtor, who had helped me purchase the condo. "Sarah, it's Albert Reynolds. I'd like to put the Oakwood condo on the market immediately." Cassidy had made her choice. Now she would live with the consequences. The process of selling a property is never simple, but when it involves family conflict, it becomes exponentially more complicated. After leaving Cassidy's condo that morning, I met with Sarah Jenkins to discuss my options. Her advice was both professional and compassionate. Albert, I understand this is a difficult situation. Let me walk you through the practical steps, then we can discuss how to navigate the personal aspects. And Sarah explained that as the legal owner, I had every right to sell the property. However, with Cassidy living there, we needed to handle things carefully. The first step would be formal written notice of my intent to sell, followed by scheduling necessary inspections and repairs before listing. What about Cassidy and her boyfriend? I asked, still processing the discovery that a stranger had been living in my property for months. Since there's no formal lease, technically, they're considered month-to-month tenants. You'll need to provide proper notice according to state law, typically 30 days. After the sale, the new owners could choose to offer them a lease or require them to vacate. I nodded, absorbing this information. I want to be fair, but I also need to protect my investment. That's reasonable, Sarah assured me. Let's start with the formal notification, then schedule a property assessment to determine what repairs might be needed before listing. And that afternoon, I emailed Cassidy a detailed letter explaining my decision to sell the condo, the timeline for the process, and her options moving forward. I also offered to help her find appropriate housing within her current means, whether that meant a roommate situation or a studio apartment she could afford independently. Her response came hours later, a single line, "You can't be serious. This is cruel even for you." I replied, "I'm completely serious, Cassidy. The decision is made. I hope you'll use the next 30 days to make plans that set you up for success." What followed was radio silence from my daughter, though I later learned from Mia that Cassidy was actively posting on social media about having an abusive father who was making her homeless. The distortion was painful, but not entirely surprising, given Cassidy's pattern of avoiding responsibility. Meanwhile, Mia called me concerned about the situation. "Dad? Cassidy's been texting me constantly. She says you're selling the condo just to punish her." "That's not accurate," I said carefully. "I'm selling because the arrangement isn't working. The property is being damaged, the financial agreements aren't being honored, and there's evidence of activities I can't legally or morally support happening there." "I know," Mia sighed. "Cassidy's always twisted things when they don't go her way. I tried telling her that actions have consequences, but she just accused me of taking your side. You don't need to be in the middle of this, sweetheart. Focus on your studies. This is between Cassidy and me. But we're still a family, Dad. I hate seeing this rift between you two." Her words touched me deeply. Despite everything, we were indeed still a family, albeit a fractured one at the moment. "Some rifts need to happen before healing can begin, Mia. Your sister needs to find her own way now." And the property assessment revealed significant issues beyond normal wear and tear. Water damage from an unreported leak, burns on countertops, and flooring a broken window covered with cardboard and graffiti on one bedroom wall. The repair estimates came to nearly $8,000. When I shared this information with Cassidy, her response shifted from defiance to panic. "I can't afford to pay for repairs, and where am I supposed to go in 30 days? "These are the questions you should have considered before damaging the property," I replied evenly. "As for where to go, I've researched some affordable apartments in safe areas. I can email you the listings." "Those places will be terrible. Why are you doing this to me?" "I'm not doing anything to you, Cassidy. These are the natural consequences of your choices." As the reality of the situation sank in, Cassidy's approach changed. She called me in tears, promising to change, to find a job immediately, to make payments, to ask Derek to leave. "Please, Dad, give me one more chance. I'll prove I can be responsible." It was tempting to relent. Every parent wants to believe in their child's capacity to change, to spare them pain if possible. But I remembered Elizabeth's words about allowing natural consequences to teach necessary lessons, and I considered the pattern of broken promises that had led us here. I appreciate that you want to change, I told her. But this isn't about promises anymore. It's about demonstrated behavior over time. The decision to sell is final, but I'm still here to support your transition to truly independent living. Support? How is making me homeless support? She demanded, anger replacing her pleading tone. You won't be homeless unless you choose to be. There are affordable options within your reach, especially if you find employment. The difference is that now you'll need to create your own stability rather than having it provided for you. The conversation ended with Cassidy hanging up on me, a response I was becoming accustomed to. Days later, I received a call from Aunt Margaret Elizabeth's sister, who had always been close to the girls. Albert Cassidy called me very upset. She says you're forcing her out of her home with nowhere to go. That doesn't sound like you. I explained the situation fully, including the damaged property, the unauthorized resident, the missed payments, and the evidence of drug use. I've offered to help her find appropriate housing, Margaret. What I won't do is continue enabling behavior that's harmful to her and costly to me. After a thoughtful pause, Margaret said, Elizabeth would agree with you, you know. She always said children need to fall sometimes to learn how to get back up. That means a lot coming from you, I admitted. I've been second-guessing myself, wondering if I'm being too harsh. Tough love is still love, Albert. It might be the kindest thing you can do for Cassidy right now, even if she can't see it. Our conversation strengthened my resolve. The condo went on the market the following week, listed significantly below market value for a quick sale due to the needed repairs. Despite Cassidy's attempts to complicate matters by being uncooperative, with showing times, we received an offer within days from a young couple looking for their first home. When I called to inform Cassidy about the pending sale, her response was unexpected. This isn't over, Dad. You think you're teaching me some lesson, but all you're doing is destroying our relationship. I'll figure things out on my own. I don't need your help or your judgments anymore. The cold finality in her voice sent a chill through me. Had I pushed too far? Was I losing my daughter in my attempt to help her grow up? These questions haunted me as we moved toward the closing date, but I remained committed to the path I'd chosen, hoping that someday Cassidy would understand. It came from love, not punishment. The sale of the condo closed faster than expected, with the eager young couple willing to handle the repairs themselves in exchange for the reduced price. This accelerated the timeline, giving Cassidy just 2 weeks to find new housing arrangements instead of the full 30 days originally planned. When I called to inform her of the updated schedule, her panic was palpable. 2 weeks. That's impossible. Where am I supposed to go? I've emailed you listings for several affordable apartments and rooms for rent, I reminded her. Have you looked into any of them? Those places are all disgusting, and they want first and last month's rent plus security deposit. I don't have that kind of money just lying around. When I had anticipated this obstacle. I'm willing to provide the security deposit and first month's rent for a suitable place as a one-time assistance. After that, you'll need steady employment to maintain it. There was a pause on the line. What about Derek? These places are too small for both of us. My offer is for you, Cassidy. Derek is an adult who should have his own resources. If not, that raises serious questions about your relationship. You've always judged my choices, she muttered. Fine, I'll figure something out. But I'm not ready in 2 weeks. The new owners will just have to wait. That's not how real estate transactions work, I explained. The new owners take possession on the closing date. If you haven't vacated, they could pursue legal action. Against me, I don't own anything. Against both of us, potentially. And it would create legal problems you don't need. After more resistance, Cassidy finally agreed to look at apartments. I accompanied her to several viewings, trying to maintain a supportive presence despite the tension between us. The units were indeed basic compared to the condo, but clean and safe, representing what she could realistically afford on an entry-level salary. "This is so depressing," she said, as we left a one-bedroom apartment in an older but well-maintained building. "Going from my beautiful condo to this." "It wasn't your condo, Cassidy. That's been the fundamental misunderstanding. And this apartment isn't depressing. It's a starting point. Everyone begins somewhere." "Easy for you to say. You and Mom had help from Grandpa when you were starting out. Your grandfather co-signed our first apartment lease because we had limited credit history, but we paid every bill ourselves. I worked 2 jobs while finishing my degree. Your mother budgeted every penny while building her teaching career. We earned what we achieved." Cassidy rolled her eyes, a gesture that made her look suddenly very young. "Whatever. I guess I'll take this one since I don't have much choice." I arranged to pay the security deposit and first month's rent directly to the landlord, making it clear this was a one-time assistance. Cassidy signed a 6-month lease, the shortest term available, clearly hoping this situation would be temporary. The day before the closing, I went to the condo to ensure Cassidy was prepared for the move. I found her hastily packing with Derek nowhere in sight. "Where's your boyfriend?" I asked, helping her seal a box of kitchen items. "He's getting the truck from his cousin," she said, avoiding my eyes. "He'll be here soon." Something in her tone suggested this wasn't the full truth. "Cassidy, is Derek actually helping with this move? Is he planning to live with you in the new apartment?" She hesitated before answering. "He says he needs time to figure things out. He might stay with his cousin for a while until we can find a bigger place." I nodded, suspecting what was really happening. Derek had been happy to live in a nice condo provided by Cassidy's father, but a small apartment she had to pay for herself was apparently less appealing. Rather than point this out, I continued helping with the packing. By evening, with still no sign of Derek or his cousin's truck, I arranged for a moving company to come the following morning. Cassidy was increasingly agitated, checking her phone constantly. "He's not coming, is he?" I finally asked. Tears welled in her eyes. "He said this is too much drama, that I should figure it out and call him when I'm settled." Her voice cracked. "He took some of my things, Dad. My laptop, my good jewelry. He said he'd bring them later, but I'm not sure he will." The anger that surged through me was difficult to contain. This man had taken advantage of my daughter, lived rent-free in my property, and now had stolen from her when things became challenging. But expressing that anger wouldn't help Cassidy in this moment. "I'm sorry that happened," I said gently. "We can file a police report about the stolen items if you want. But right now, let's focus on completing this move." For the first time in months, Cassidy didn't argue or deflect. She nodded, wiped her tears, and continued packing. We worked in companionable silence for hours, achieving more progress than I'd expected. As I prepared to leave for the night, Cassidy suddenly asked, "Why didn't you stop me? Dad, why did you let me make all these mistakes?" The question caught me off guard. "Would you have listened if I'd tried?" She considered this. "Probably not. I was so sure I knew better than you that my way was more fun, less restrictive. Growing up means making your own decisions, Cassidy. Some of those will be mistakes, and that's how we learn. I could have forced you to live by my rules in my house, but you needed to discover your own path." "Even if that path led straight into a wall?" she asked with a sad smile. "Sometimes, especially then. The hardest lessons tend to be the most important ones." She nodded thoughtfully. "I still think selling the condo was extreme. It may seem that way now. Time will tell if it was the right decision for both of us." The following day, the movers efficiently transferred Cassidy's belongings to her new apartment. The condo empty now, except for the damage that told the story of Cassidy's tumultuous residence, was turned over to the new owners. A chapter had closed. As I helped Cassidy unpack essential items in her new place, I sensed a subtle shift in her demeanor. The entitled anger had diminished, replaced by a more subdued, reflective mood. Whether this represented genuine growth or merely a temporary response to circumstances remained to be seen, but it felt like a small step in the right direction. "I'll help you file a police report about your stolen items tomorrow," I offered. "And I've prepared a list of employment opportunities in this area that might be worth exploring." "Thanks, Dad," she said quietly. "I'll take it from here." As I left her standing in the small apartment that represented her true first step into adult independence, I felt both heartache and hope. The path ahead would not be easy for Cassidy, but perhaps it would be ultimately more rewarding than the artificial stability I had provided previously. The true test of my decision and of Cassidy's character was just beginning. The 3 months following Cassidy's move were a period of minimal contact between us. She declined my offers to help her file a police report about Derek's theft, saying she didn't want to make things worse. And I learned through Mia that Derek had returned some of the items, but sold others, claiming they were gifts he was entitled to keep. Cassidy found a job at a local coffee shop, barely enough to cover her expenses. But a start. Our conversations, when they happened at all, were brief and superficial. She made it clear she still blamed me for her reduced circumstances, while I maintained that she was experiencing the natural outcomes of her choices. "She talks about you like you're the villain in her story," Mia told me during one of her weekend visits home from college. "But I've noticed she's stopped posting those party pictures online, and she mentioned looking into community college classes for next semester." "Small steps." I nodded. "All I've ever wanted is for her to build a stable life she can be proud of. The path there isn't important." "I used to think you were harder on Cassidy than on me," Mia admitted. "Now I realize you were responding to our different choices. You've always been consistent about consequences." "I've tried to be," I said, "though I question myself constantly, especially with Cassidy." Mia squeezed my hand. "Mom would be proud of how you've handled things. She always said love isn't just about comfort, it's about growth." The holiday season approached traditionally, a time our family came together, despite any ongoing tensions. I invited Cassidy to Thanksgiving dinner, keeping my expectations modest. To my surprise, she accepted. The Cassidy who arrived at our door that Thanksgiving was noticeably different from the angry young woman who had screamed at me to leave her condo. Her appearance was more put together, her manner more subdued. She brought a homemade pie, explaining somewhat bashfully that her coworker had taught her the recipe. Throughout dinner, I noticed small changes in her behavior. She asked Mia thoughtful questions about her pre-med studies, rather than making everything about herself. She offered to help with dishes without prompting. She even asked about my work, something she hadn't done in years. After Mia excused herself to video chat with her boyfriend Cassidy, and I found ourselves alone in the living room. The silence stretched between us until she finally spoke. "I've been thinking a lot about everything that happened," she began, fidgeting with the edge of a cushion. "I was really angry with you for a long time." "I know," I said, simply giving her space to continue. The apartment felt like such a huge step down. I hated it at first, hated you for putting me there. She paused, gathering her thoughts. But something weird happened after a few weeks. I started to feel, I don't know, proud, I guess. When I paid my own rent the first time completely by myself, it felt different than when I was just giving you money for the condo. I nodded, sensing she needed to express these realizations without my commentary. "And Derek, you were right about him. He only wanted me when things were easy. When I asked him to contribute to our life together, he disappeared." She gave a rueful smile. Classic dad prediction. I take no pleasure in being right about that, I said gently. I know. She looked down at her hands. I've started taking a financial management class at the community center. The instructor says I should be able to repair my credit in about 2 years if I'm consistent. I've also applied to the community college for spring semester. Just 2 classes to start, while I keep working. Pride swelled in my chest, though I kept my response measured. Those sound like positive steps, Cassidy. They're baby steps, she acknowledged, but they're mine. I'm making these decisions for myself, not because anyone is forcing me. She finally met my eyes directly. I'm not saying you were right about everything. Selling the condo still feels extreme, but I understand better why you did it. It wasn't an easy decision, I admitted. I questioned it many times. Would you do it again knowing how things turned out? I considered the question carefully. Yes, because despite the pain and conflict, I believe it was necessary for your growth. Sometimes we need to lose what we take for granted before we can build something meaningful of our own. Cassidy nodded slowly. I think I'm starting to understand that. After another pause, she added, I miss Mom at times like these. She would have known exactly what to say to make everything clear. She would have been direct but gentle. I agreed, feeling Elizabeth's absence acutely in that moment. And she would be proud of you for the steps you're taking now. We talked for hours that night, the longest and most honest conversation we'd had in years. Cassidy shared her struggles with the transition to independence, her embarrassment when former friends saw her working at the coffee shop, her realization that many of her party friends weren't friends at all once the parties stopped. I shared my perspective as well, my fears that I had failed her as a father, my struggle to balance support with enabling my hope that our relationship could heal despite the difficult decisions I'd made. When Cassidy left that evening, she hugged me tightly for the first time in years. I'm still figuring things out, Dad, but I think maybe selling the condo was the wake-up call I needed. Just keep moving forward, I told her. That's all any of us can do. In the months that followed, Cassidy's progress continued. She was promoted to shift supervisor at the coffee shop, maintained good grades in her community college courses, and even started volunteering at a local animal shelter. We began having regular Sunday dinners together, rebuilding our relationship on a foundation of mutual respect rather than dependency. The apartment she had initially described as depressing was now a source of pride, neatly maintained and gradually personalized with modest, thoughtful purchases. She had found responsible roommates to share expenses, a small amount each month toward future goals. One Sunday evening as we finished dinner, Cassidy shared a surprising announcement. I've started a savings account specifically for a down payment, she said. My financial management instructor says I should be able to qualify for a mortgage in about 3 years if I stay on track. That's impressive planning, I said, genuinely proud of her foresight. I want to do it right this time, she explained. Buy something I can truly afford, something I've earned. She smiled sheepishly. And I promise to pay all the association fees on time. I have no doubt you will, I replied, recognizing the tremendous growth these plans represented. As I drove home that night, I reflected on the painful journey that had brought us here. The hurt in Cassidy's eyes when I told her the condo would be sold. The angry words we had exchanged. The months of strained communication. But also the resilience she had discovered within herself, the responsibility she had developed, and the authentic pride that comes from genuine achievement rather than entitlement. Elizabeth had been right all those years ago. Sometimes the kindest thing we can do for those we love is to allow them to experience the natural consequences of their actions, not out of cruelty or punishment, but because it's through overcoming challenges that we discover our true capabilities. The day Cassidy screamed, "Go away, or I'll call the police," had been one of the most painful moments of my life as a father. But it had also been necessary, a breaking point that allowed for a new beginning. In calling the Realtor, instead of retreating from that conflict, I had chosen the harder path of true parental love. Not the love that shields from all pain, but the love that believes enough in someone's potential to let them fall, knowing they have the strength to rise again. 1 year has passed since that pivotal confrontation at the condo. The lessons learned during this challenging period have transformed our family in ways I never could have predicted. Cassidy continues to flourish in her independence. She completed her associate's degree in business administration and recently secured a position as a marketing assistant at a local firm, a job that aligns with her original career interests, but that she now approaches with newfound responsibility. Her financial management has become so consistent that she was able to qualify for a small auto loan, purchasing a reliable used car that she researched thoroughly before committing. The most significant change, however, has been in her perspective. The sense of entitlement that once defined her outlook has been replaced by genuine appreciation for what she earns. During a recent conversation, she told me, "I used to think happiness came from having things handed to me. Now I understand that the things you work hardest for bring the most satisfaction." Mia is thriving as well now in her 3rd year of pre-med studies. The sisters have developed a closer relationship with Cassidy, sometimes seeking advice from her younger sibling on matters of discipline and long-term planning areas where Mia has always excelled. The rivalry that once characterized their interactions has evolved into mutual respect for their different strengths. As for me, I've experienced my own growth through this ordeal. For years after Elizabeth's death, I focused so intently on providing stability for my daughters that I neglected certain aspects of my own life. The conflict with Cassidy forced me to reevaluate my approach to parenting adult children and to consider what the next chapter of my life should entail. I've started dating again cautiously. Martha, a literature professor I met at a community fundraiser, has become a meaningful presence in my life. She lost her husband to a heart attack several years ago and understands the complex journey of building a new life after such a loss. The girls have been supportive of this development, Mia enthusiastically, and Cassidy with growing acceptance. Last month, Cassidy invited me to dinner at her apartment, insisting on cooking the entire meal herself. As we enjoyed a surprisingly delicious lasagna, she shared news that brought our journey full circle. "I've been pre-approved for a mortgage," she announced, her pride evident in her voice. "It's for a modest condo in Riverside Park, nothing fancy but in a good neighborhood with a reasonable HOA. The down payment is entirely from my own savings." "Cassidy, that's remarkable," I said, genuinely impressed by how far she had come in just 1 year. "You've worked incredibly hard to make this happen." "I wouldn't have been able to do it without the wake-up call you gave me," she admitted. "When you sold the condo, it felt like the end of the world. Now I see it was actually the beginning of something better." "How so?" I asked, curious about her perspective. "The first condo was your achievement that you shared with me, and I took it for granted. This new place will be my achievement, something I've earned through my own efforts. The pride feels completely different." She smiled reflectively. "Plus, I actually read every word of the HOA agreement this time." We both laughed, the tension that had defined our relationship for so long, now replaced by an ease I had feared might never return. "There's something else I want to say," Cassidy continued, her expression growing serious. "I owe you an apology for how I behaved, for the things I said to you that day, especially for threatening to call the police on my own father, who was only trying to help me." "You were in a different place then," I said, not wanting to dwell on painful memories. "That's no excuse. I was selfish and entitled, and I hurt you deeply. I need you to know that I understand now why you made that difficult decision, and I'm grateful you were strong enough to do what was necessary, even when I hated you for it." Her words brought tears to my eyes, something that rarely happened. As a parent, the hardest thing is watching your child struggle. The instinct is to remove all obstacles to make the path smooth, but that doesn't prepare anyone for real life. "Mom knew that, didn't she?" Cassidy asked softly. "That's why she made you promise to raise us to be independent." "She did. Your mother was wise about many things, but especially about what children truly need from their parents. Not constant protection, but the tools and confidence to face life's challenges." We talked late into the evening, sharing perspectives on our journey that would have been impossible during the height of our conflict. Cassidy revealed how hitting rock bottom after losing the condo and being abandoned by Derek had forced her to reevaluate everything. I shared how difficult it had been to maintain my resolve when all I wanted was to ease her pain. "You know what's funny?" Cassidy said as I prepared to leave. "When I was living in the condo you bought, I never felt like I had a real home. It was just a place to party to impress people who didn't really care about me. But this small apartment with its secondhand furniture and walls I painted myself feels like mine in a way the condo never did." Her insight struck me as profound. Ownership isn't just about whose name is on a deed. It's about the investment of yourself, your efforts, your care. "Exactly," she nodded. "I own my life now, not just my stuff." As I drive home that night, I reflected on the extraordinary transformation our family had undergone. The pain and conflict had been necessary components of growth, forcing each of us to confront uncomfortable truths and make difficult changes. Elizabeth would be proud of the women our daughters have become, each in her own way, embodying the strength and independence we had hoped to instill. And she would understand that sometimes the greatest act of parental love is not rescuing our children from consequences, but having faith in their capacity to overcome them and emerge stronger. The day Cassidy shouted, "Go away or I'll call the police," had seemed like the lowest point in our relationship. In retrospect, it was the catalyst for authentic growth that might never have happened otherwise. By choosing to call the Realtor instead of backing down from that painful confrontation, I had inadvertently set in motion a series of events that ultimately led to Cassidy finding her true path, not as an entitled dependent, but as a capable, responsible adult who appreciates the value of what she earns. This journey has reinforced my belief that parenting is not about popularity, but about preparation. Our children may not always understand or appreciate our decisions in the moment, especially when those decisions require them to face uncomfortable consequences. But with consistency, clear communication, and unwavering love, even the most difficult lessons can eventually bear fruit. If you're facing a similar challenge with someone you love, remember that sometimes the kindest response isn't the easiest one. Have you ever had to make a tough decision that caused short-term pain but led to long-term growth? I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please consider subscribing to the channel and sharing it with others who might be struggling with similar family dynamics. Your support helps these stories reach those who need them most. Thank you for joining me on this journey. And remember, true love sometimes means having the courage to say no when saying yes would be easier.